the Nike React Infinity Run Flyknit 3. At 200 plus miles, how is this shoe standing up to the elements? Let's talk about it. So before we get into it, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed and watching this content. Thanks so much, love you guys a lot. Follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of running updates, whether they're to the Chicago Marathon, Tokyo Marathon, and things of that sort. So without further ado, I'm going to leave the specs up here and let's just begin talking about the shoe. So in my case, we always start off with what the outsoles look like at this point in time. Great news already. We can just kind of kick it off right away with the React Infinity Run Flyknit 3, or we're just going to call it the React 3 in this case, just for the sake of ease, I suppose. You can already see that the outsole is in pretty decent shape. Again, for myself, when I run, I have a few spots I usually pay attention to. One is, of course, this right outsole area, and on the left foot, I do pay attention to how the center is kind of burning. And the trick with this shoe is that it's in a unique scenario in my shoe rotation per se. So one, for example, is that it's a multi-purpose type of shoe. So I have, like, my running shoes, I try to keep them away from weight training, for example. The React 3 in this case is one of those shoes that I will use for weight training for a couple of reasons that we'll get into a little bit later. We'll just stick with the running stuff here first. So that being said, the wear on the outsole has more splotches all over the place, and I even have some, wear in the heel as a result from leg day stuff or just walking around in the shoe and just having, that roll of the foot and whatnot. So, from a pro side, the shoe is what it is. It's a very comfortable recovery to everyday type of style trainer with an upper that is kind of woolly in a way, so if you're taking it on a longer run, some moisture may kind of begin building in the shoe, and as a result, your run may start sounding kind of, squishy, or like you're stepping in water and whatnot. And, as a result, it becomes an uncomfortable long-distance run shoe in that case. Now, if you're running when it's a little bit colder outside, I think those circumstances or things that build up in the shoe in this case kind of subside as the temperature kind of helps you regulate your own body temperature and whatnot. So that's something to think about, of course. But yeah, I kind of mixed some pros and cons there. So yeah, the cons is that still the upper is still kind of woolly in that sense. Pros are that when you run in this shoe, you pretty much get exactly what you're looking for out of it in terms of that recovery to everyday pace. I won't take this shoe obviously on a tempo run because there's other options in my shoe lineup that would be able to satisfy that. And again, it's not to say you couldn't, it's just if you have other shoes like something with a carbon plate, a Tempo Next percent, maybe you have an Alpha Fly or Vaporfly 2 available to you, you're most likely going to do your tempo work in a shoe that's going to enable you to go faster naturally. So in this case, again, the shoe is marketed as one of those shoes where you're going to have a recovery feeling in your foot because of how much React foam is just pretty much all around the shoe. And there's like two different stacks of it, as you can see. We've got the one up here on top, and then we have the second stack with the unique like Swiss cheese design on it. And basically we also have the heel clip here with the plastic rubberish guard for that stability. And yeah, it's just, I've known this since about at least 2020 when I had the first Infinity React 1 or whatever it was, that the shoe is not really meant to be too fast. It can go fast if you're feeling good, but again, it's not the intended purpose of the shoe. So that's just something to obviously consider. But as you can see, at 200 plus miles, the shoe is still in pretty good shape. I'm not experiencing too much slippage at this point. I imagine it's going to come up real soon though, because once you break this rubber and get to the React foam, then we start getting into some trouble of maybe impact points in the shoe that could end up hurting your foot. It's very likely and it's very possible when it gets there. Hopefully we don't get there until like 400 plus miles as we, kind of go on. So the two unique things about this shoe from my standpoint, right? One is that from a running standpoint, because it's a recovery and everyday shoe, it's hard to put this shoe into a place where it can compete against some of my other daily trainers that were or are available, such as like the Vomero 16, the Mach 5. I was using the 1080 version 11 from New Balance, for example, for a period of time. The Tempo Next percent, if I felt like using it as a daily trainer. Just having this shoe as part of the rotation was tricky, and it was hard to find the spot where I needed that recovery shoe in that lineup. But now, seeing that we're in this like tapering of the marathon season, the shoe finally has a spot where I'm willing to take it for like a forced kind of recovery run and even give it that more, you know, everyday pace if necessary. But because of the weight of the shoe and because of the materials in the foam and the, you know, the compounds used within the shoe, it's more likely to kind of keep your pace a little bit slower, and you naturally just won't feel yourself like you need to get forced to run faster in it. And plus, with the React 3 versus like the React 1, the lockdown is just so much better with, you know, how they've set up the tongue, how they set up the eyelids here, that it's not as much material and plush in the heel lip of the shoe as there was in the React 2, for example, when I had it. So it's not as busy, again, as the React 2 was, a little bit more busy than the React 1, but it's just about right in this case for comfort during a recovery to everyday style run. And then, of course, the second unique scenario is when I take this weightlifting, for example. It's one of the only shoes I have in my lineup that isn't necessarily a platform or some kind of Converse with, like, you know, a flat, I guess, outsole to the shoe with like as minimal stack height as possible. That would essentially, when you're doing something like squatting, for example, this shoe with the React doesn't sink nearly as much because of how dense and how less rebounded the React is going to provide, versus like if you were to squat in like an Alpha Fly or Vaporfly Next Percent 2, which, by the way, I've seen people do it. It looks ridiculous, right? If you're gonna wear the $300 shoe just to squat, like, you know, Godspeed, gentlemen, but like I would personally recommend something more with like React foam. So even like going to the gym with like a Pegasus like even makes more sense. At least then, you know, you still have the React compound and maybe you'll have that air zoom pod in the shoe, but it's not going to like bounce you off when you're doing squats. Whereas here, it's more of a mid stack height shoe, and as a result, it gets you closer to something like a gym shoe style thing, like a Converse, or like maybe that platform that has a more design with a higher heel lift and then kind of offsets you a little bit more. So I'm not sure if those platforms are like 10mm stack heights. They could be more even, just depending. I haven't done too much research on them. I had a pair a long time ago. I don't know where that pair is. Probably somewhere in my shoe collection out there. But so at this point in time and during my Chicago Marathon taper phase, this is going to be one of the shoes I'm using a lot more during my day-to-day weightlifting sessions, during some of my easier runs when I'm outside, whether I'm on the treadmill or whatnot, just to reduce the impact as much as possible and have as much of a plush cloud while I'm running with this React foam and the specific unique build that this shoe's foam and outsole pretty much feature. So right now at 200 plus miles, I'm still happy with the shoe. Again, my biggest concern is just finding a place for it in my shoe rotation at this point in time, but again, because we're in this taper, I have a spot for it now. Just when I'm in like regular mid-season mode, there's other shoes that are in my lineup that are a little bit faster and more everyday paced and built that I would rather keep my eyes on rather than kind of working with older shoes that are available to me. So that's not a jab at the React 3. If you like the React 3 and you're using it in your regular lineup, by all means go for it. It's just, again, that's just when I'm playing around with various different pairs of shoes and they all have like various different purposes. It's just hard to get back to an older shoe and just go, yep, this is the one we're going to use. But when I do use it, you're like, okay, great. I remember why I love this shoe as an everyday to recovery day shoe, and I'm good with it. So that's where we're going to leave it at right now. I think the next time I'll talk about the shoe will be at 300 plus miles. I think 250 might be too soon, unless I really break something in this shoe by then. So I will leave the video here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.